Today we're talking with Chris Leyba, Republican candidate for Washington State Auditor. Thank you for taking part in this Turn Washington video, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
Can we start with helping people to get to know you? Can you share a little bit about what's motivating you to run for office?
I moved up to Washington State in 2004 to go to the University of Washington, and I got my Bachelor's of Science in Molecular Biology there. I ended up working in environmental microbiology for a year and then decided it was much more fun to learn about than actually do as a job. So then I became a police officer in 2009. I was a police officer with Seattle PD for about 6 years, and I've been with the King County Sheriff's Office for 5 now. For 6 years total of my career, I've been a detective, and 3 years of that, I actually was a law enforcement auditor. So when the U.S. Department of Justice came up to Seattle to do their consent decree, I got pulled up into audits and inspections where I performed the performance audits and the accountability audits that were needed in order for Seattle to get out of its consent decree. So that motivates me specifically for this particular office, because not only have I already done these particular types of audits, I've worked with some of the very same people I will be supervising at the state auditor's office. My motivation specifically to run for this office over something a little bit lower level necessarily is I think the state auditor is a highly overlooked office, and it has a very important role in our state that I believe we are leaving untapped. And if we start taking it seriously and we start utilizing it a little more, I think we're going to see a lot more government oversight.
Well, that leads me into another question. A lot of people don't know what a state auditor does. Can you describe a day in the life of a state auditor?
Okay, great. Yes. So your state auditor is responsible for, I'll put it this way. Your legislature is responsible for passing your laws. Your government executive, like your governor, for example, he governs the state. He appoints your, various executive position, director positions, so on and so forth. The state auditor is unique because they follow your money around. So they go into state agencies, local agencies, county agencies, and they say, okay, are you actually following your budget, and are you spending your money according to that budget? However, as of 2005, when Initiative 900 was passed, the state auditor gained one more very important function in this state, which was performance auditing. Now they can go into the agency and say, not only look at, are you using the money the way you said you were going to, but they can look at, is it really that efficient, or are you wasting money? Is there a better way to do it? And that is one of the more discretionary particular types of audits for the state auditor, but it is one of the most crucial, because that is where you can look at the real issues that matter around Washington and actually figure out if agencies are using their money appropriately and efficiently.
And speaking about using your money efficiently and appropriately, the Employment Security Office has lost somewhere between $650 million, some estimates go as high as $1 billion worth of Washingtonian taxpayer money. Can you share, as state auditor, what you could do to bring some more government accountability to that agency?
This ties right into why, I eventually, and I'll get to this later in the video, am so interested in this position, because in 2018, 2019, what happened with the state IT structure is state IT was centralized. So you had all these agencies kind of doing their own thing, and it was reimagined and centralized to make it more efficient. About a year after that, Employment Services spent about $44 million allegedly updating their IT security. Now, the current Washington State Auditor, one of her leading contributions, as far as she's concerned, is that the State Auditor's Office is the premier cybersecurity oversight agency in the state. Well, unfortunately, Employment Services Division has been subject to precisely 0 audits of their cybersecurity in her entire tenure. And obviously, we're starting to see the results of that. So if you go to my website, and www.leybaaudits.com, or you check out the Facebook at Leyba Audits, you'll see that I do these things called auditor notes. I believe it's important for me to not only say why I would be good for this office, but to show you the various types of audits and questions I would ask in those audits. About 3 weeks ago, I think it was, I did one for Employment Security or Services Division, specifically related to this scandal when it first broke. Some of the questions we need to ask Employment Services are, first of all, what are the checks and balances for the emails? Obviously, in law enforcement, I can't get into the specifics, but I have personally been involved in some of these investigations. And I can tell you, your 4-year-old child could look at some of these emails that were used to fraudulently obtain money and tell they were fake. Additionally, why were out-of-state and even out-of-country bank accounts allowed to have EFT transactions with the State Employment Security Division? Why were we sending money overseas when this was supposed to be unemployed Washington citizens? There's a lot of different things we need to ask. I think everybody's kind of focused on Susie Levine and her, her political ties to Jay Inslee and the DNC, and I think that's wrong. I think from the auditor's perspective, we need to look at the process, not the people, and see what broke down in the process. Now, if people need to be held accountable later, that's the legislature and the governor's office. My job is to report objectively what went wrong with the process.
To shift the conversation just a little bit back to your organization, if you are elected state auditor, what kind of changes would you make to that organization and why?
So I have a couple plans for the first 90 days. One of those plans, and I've already reached out to a couple legislators about this idea, is to have the legislature introduce a bill to change the Office of Washington State Auditor to the Office of the Inspector General of Washington. And here's why. The Washington State Auditor, as it exists in Article 3 of our state constitution, it really does seem more like a financial accountability and accounting position more than anything else. And Washington has evolved the position over time into something more. This really is about government oversight, both financial and process oriented. And converting this to the Office of the Inspector General will reflect that. For example, your Attorney General is your chief law enforcement officer in the state of Washington. Your Inspector General is going to be your chief oversight officer for Washington State. So in doing that, whether or not that bill passes, I'm also looking at restructuring the management structure of the state auditor's office to kind of move functions around and make it more efficient. First of all, I am going to be able to cut a few director positions out. One of them specifically is the lobbyist position. For those of you that don't know, a lot of your state agencies with your money actually hire lobbyists that go lobby your legislature, again, with your money for benefits for the agency, which is a huge conflict of interest. I'm in charge of the Washington State Auditor's Office if you elect me, which means if my people need something, I will go and get it from the legislature. That is my job. Second of all, I plan on taking special investigations and moving it out of cybersecurity and making cybersecurity its own branch specifically, because again, we need to do better with cybersecurity. It's confusing to me how this level of process breakdown happened, and obviously we need to do a little bit more. And finally, I would like to say that I'm also going to be moving special investigations to a more streamlined position in the structure, mainly because we have a problem in the state with whistleblower protection and how long it takes for those investigations. When whistleblowers come forward in state government agencies and say that there's fraud, there's always a worry that there will be retaliation against them when there's investigations going on. Police departments across this state have a standard 180-day time frame for investigating complaints. I believe our state auditor should be lowered to that time frame as well. And moving special investigations out of a busy division like cybersecurity will help us do that.
Chris, if somebody wanted to help you get elected, how could they go about doing that? And can you share with viewers out there why they should support your campaign?
Well, first of all, the biggest thing right now is I'm just trying to build relationships. I think, again, the Office of the State Auditor is so obscure. And the reality on the Republican ticket right now is that people are so target locked on the governor's race that a lot of down ticket races are really not getting a lot of attention, which I think is a big mistake, because we are looking at a very comprehensive chance to overhaul government. And it's not even a necessarily Republican Democrat thing. It's we have an administration that has broken down at every level. And we need to, as citizens, pay attention to that and look all the way down the ticket. Supporting me, I would say, obviously, elections are expensive. I'm very lucky that I'm in a race where it's not nearly as expensive as, let's say, the governor. But if you are able to donate $5 to $20, I prefer individual donors. Just for example, I actually had to drop, I had applied for an endorsement from Washington State Nurses Association that I hadn't got yet, but I had to contact them yesterday and rescind that request because of their stance on calling police officers white supremacists, and that didn't fly with me. So individual donors and individual supporters are much more important to me. Now, overall, why should you support me? You have three choices right now. You have a Democrat that entered the race 2 days before the filing expiration. I think it was like May 13th. This is a person who claims that they're the only CPA, the only person with a CPA in the race, which makes them the most qualified, which no state in the United States other than New Jersey has any sort of requirement for that. Brian Sonntag, who is a Democrat and one of our best state auditors in Washington State history, no CPA. But really also hasn't done that much to make the case for the job. And, just having that CPA doesn't mean you're going to be able to navigate the bureaucracy that is Olympia. And there is quite a bureaucracy down there. The other choice you have is the incumbent. The incumbent, Pat McCarthy, has been there for 4 years. I believe, again, there are some questionable balance issues with what is prioritized in the state auditor's office, what we look at and what we don't. Washington issues, even before COVID-19. Sound transit, big issue around Washington. Not a single performance audit has been completed in the 4 years there. I don't know if that has anything to do with her being the Sound Transit Regional Chair before she took the office, but I'll let you decide. So this is a person with 33 years of government experience. Her entire professional career has been a politician in the Pierce County area. She has more money than JT Wilcox, so I'm not really sure how that works. But she's part of the group of people that everything going on out there in Washington State right now, this is the temple she built. If you look at our executive branch, there is a combined 125 years of government experience in the executive branch right now. They cannot deny, whether you like it or not, what's going on in Washington, they built that. And I believe that the temple she built is bad and it needs to be replaced. Then you have me. And why do I think you should support me? Well, I have the perfect balance of both public and private sector experience. When I was in college, I was managing my own grocery store by the time I was 20 and going to college full time. I've managed people in that role. I've managed budgets. I've managed a weekly budget of $400,000 and 50 employees in that role. But more importantly, when I got into government, I took it upon myself to work at all different levels of Washington State government and in all four corners of this state. One of my roles I had was I was a state contractor with Washington Traffic Safety Commission, where I taught all over the state. So I have seen the differences between going to Spokane and going to Wenatchee and going to Seattle, and they are very different. You need somebody with that experience, and you need somebody that can go in there on day one and look at that, look past what bureaucracy that might be in your way and try and figure it out, try and figure out ways to make things better. And I believe I have the best balance professionally to do that.
Thank you, Chris.